Honourable Senators, I rise today on the unceded lands of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation to contribute to the debate at report stage on Bill C-282, an Act to amend the Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development Act. The amendment to the Act, as described in the original bill, aims to permanently protect our supply-managed dairy, poultry and egg sectors in any future trade negotiations. Today, as we consider the report of the committee studying the private member's bill C-282, we do so with respect for the concerns of Canada's supply-managed sectors, which gave rise to the original bill. These farmers are our neighbours, and they provide us with dependable, good quality, healthy food. We do so also with respect for other agricultural sectors. These farmers and the associated businesses are also our neighbours, and they provide us and people around the world with good quality food. And we do so with respect for Canada's non-agricultural businesses, as they too are our neighbours, and they provide jobs and valued goods to us and to the world. Colleagues, I feel that it is most important at the outset to underline the fact that our Foreign Affairs and International Trade Committee studied this bill with the rigour, balance and independence which is characteristic of our Senate chamber, with a view to the potential impact of this bill on multiple sectors of our economy, on Canada's overall prosperity, and on the long-term implications of the bill for our international trade policies and on our negotiations practices. As we heard at second reading from our colleague Senator Harder and from several expert witnesses, the core of this bill is not about supply management. It's about how Canada conducts itself on the global trade stage. By introducing legislative restrictions on our trade negotiators, we're looking at an approach that experts have flagged as a potential limitation to Canada's flexibility in negotiations, a flexibility that has been essential to Canada's success in the past. Our Foreign Affairs and International Trade Committee held 8 committee meetings and heard testimony from 52 witnesses from a broad range of voices, former trade negotiators, trade experts, departmental officials, and representatives from both supply-managed and non-supply-managed agricultural sectors, many of whom run family farms. Through their testimony, one fact became abundantly clear. While the bill may have the intention of bringing stability and the desired certainty to supply-managed sectors, it comes with real risks to Canada's negotiating power, to our economy, and it exacerbates the already growing uncertainty in our other industries, agricultural and non-agricultural. Our committee responded to these concerns by recommending a vital amendment, one that I believe will help Canada retain its flexibility to act in the national interest across all sectors. Let's first consider Bill C-282 in the broader international context. In countries around the world, we see governments protecting certain vital sectors as a policy choice, but they do so without the rigidity of a legislative mandate. Look at Brazil's sugarcane or Japan's rice, both deeply rooted in national identity and fiercely defended in trade talks. Yet neither country have codified these protections in law. Instead, their negotiators are empowered to protect these sectors while keeping their options open to make decisions that best suit their country's needs in each negotiation. This is, in fact, our current situation with Canadian negotiators instructed to protect our supply-managed sectors. Bill C-282, as it was originally drafted, would impose a fixed, in law, unyielding restriction on Canada's negotiators, preventing even the possibility of discussing dairy, poultry, and eggs. We did not find evidence of any example globally of a country legislating similar exclusions. During our study, Jonathan Freed, Canada's former ambassador to the World Trade Organization, described the bill as a legislative straitjacket, warning that such a rigid mandate would limit Canada's strategic options by ruling out certain discussions before negotiations even began. Mr. Freed underscored that successful trade negotiations are dynamic, requiring flexibility to align our national interests across various sectors. By legislating an exclusion, Canada would be setting a precedent. Another key witness, Ian Burney, a former Canadian chief trade negotiator, expressed similar concerns. He cautioned that this bill would send a concerning signal to our trading partners that Canada is willing to limit its own negotiating options, a choice no other nation makes. Our negotiators work tirelessly to defend sensitive sectors, but they need room to adapt as situations evolve. Rigid legislative barriers, he argued, would weaken Canada's ability to make informed trade-offs when and if needed. Looking ahead, the need for adaptability and flexibility becomes even clearer. We're facing increased trade tensions globally and with our closest trading partner, the United States, signaling more protectionist stances. With Donald Trump's recent election, we may see further challenges in our trade relations. We really don't know. Given that 78% of Canada's exports are U.S.-bound, the stakes for many Canadian sectors are substantial. This is particularly concerning as we approach the 2026 renegotiation of the Canada-United States-Mexico Trade Agreement, CUSMA. CUSMA's trilateral merchandise trade totaled $1.93 trillion in 2023. Our committee heard extensively from representatives of the supplied-managed sectors about their fears of further concessions and the related erosion of their industry, and that is a concern we have to all listen to. Our committee heard testimony from other sectors, and we received a letter on October 31st, from which I will quote briefly. Okay. If enacted in its unamended state, Bill C-282 would legislatively handcuff Canada and its trade negotiators. This would lead to our trading partners refusing to engage on key topics of vital interest to Canada. Specifically, CUSMA contains key provisions that can be put at risk if Canada's trade negotiators are handcuffed. Some of the clearest examples are the dispute settlement chapter, rules of origin provisions, labor standards provisions, environmental commitments, provisions governing trade and energy, government procurement, intellectual property. These key strategic interests that Canada has protected through CUSMA are fundamental to the future success of the agreement. No special interest group is worth the onslaught of economic harm that Bill C-282, in its original form, would bring to Canadian businesses and workers. We ask senators to put the collective interests of all Canadian industries first by rejecting C-282 and to protect our future economic prosperity. Signed by Alberta Beef Producers, Alberta Canola Producers Commission, Alberta Cattle Feeders Association, Alberta Chambers of Commerce, Alberta Grains, Alberta Pulse Growers, BC Association of Cattle Feeders, BC Grain Producers Association, Beef Farmers of Ontario, British Columbia Cattlemen's Association, Canadian Agri-Food Trade Alliance, Canadian Canola Growers Association, Canadian Cattle Association, Canadian Oilseed Processors Association, Canadian Pork Council, Canadian Sugar Institute, Canola Council of Canada, Cereals Canada, CropLife Canada, Fertilizer Canada, Grain Farmers of Ontario, Grain Farmers of Canada, Greater Vancouver Board of Trade, Pulse Canada, Manitoba Beef Producers, Manitoba Canola Growers Association, Manitoba Crop Alliance, Manitoba Pulse and Soybean Growers, National Cattle Feeders Association, New Brunswick Cattle Producers, Nova Scotia Cattle Producers, Ontario Bean Growers, Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers, Prairie Oat Growers Association, Prince Edward Island Cattle Producers, Saskatchewan Cattlemen's Association, Saskatchewan Heavy Construction Association, Saskatchewan Pulse Growers, Saskatchewan Trucking Association, Saskatchewan Oilseeds, Sask Wheat, Soy Canada, and Wheat Growers Association. Okay, so that's quite a number of people who have written to us about their concern. Following on that, Ambassador Freed, who spoke to our committee, also reminded us that trade is reciprocal. If we signal a protectionist stance by legislating an exclusion, other nations could respond with similar restrictions on Canadian exports, raising costs for consumers and restricting our access to global markets. The timing could not be more pressing, as we see a worldwide shift towards protectionism. Roland Paris, a professor of international relations at Ottawa U, warned us that this bill comes at a critical and challenging moment as the global trade environment grows more uncertain. As Ian Burney pointed out, we risk limiting Canada's negotiating power precisely when it is most needed. The original language of Bill C-282 would impose unique constraints, tying our hands in ways that other countries avoid. We heard at committee that passing this bill in its unamended form now, amid heightened protectionist sentiment in the U.S., presents a strategic and tactical error. Former Deputy Prime Minister and former Minister of Foreign Affairs John Manley, along with others, intimated that the unamended bill is like putting a bullseye on the supply-managed sectors or waving a red flag, signaling to our trading counterparts that this is where Canada is sensitive and perhaps inadvertently bringing them into the spotlight during negotiations. In light of these risks, our committee proposed and passed an amendment to the bill. This amendment specifies that Bill C-282's restrictions will not apply to agreements already in force or under renegotiation, nor to any ongoing negotiations. This amendment is crucial to preserving Canada's ability to respond strategically to new trade scenarios as they arise. Without it, we risk limiting our capacity to pursue trade agreements that balance the interests of all sectors across the Canadian economy. Colleagues, studying Bill C-282 enabled us to reflect on how we balance the protection of key sectors with the flexibility needed for our broader economic well-being. While we understand the importance of supporting supply-managed sectors, the committee's amendment ensures we do not attempt to do so by compromising our position in current trade negotiation or future renegotiation of existing trade agreements, the most significant and urgent of which is the CUSMA trade agreement with the U.S. and Mexico. The amendment safeguards Canada's long-term economic resilience in a rapidly changing world and allows us to pursue our strengths as we and the world transition to a net zero emissions future. Honourable colleagues, I am proud to be a member of the Senate Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Trade, and I am particularly proud of the fair, respectful, thorough, independent, and even-handed way we conducted our review of this highly politicized bill. Colleagues, I encourage you to support the committee's report and the amended version of Bill C-282, understanding that this amendment is essential to ensuring Canada's trade flexibility remains intact. It is a prudent and balanced choice designed to support the vitality of Canada's economy, the future prosperity of Canadians, and to protect our reputation as a free and fair trading partner. Thank you. Merci. Walaleo.